Hello and welcome to Season 6, Episode 22 of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. I'm your host, Christina Hagen, coming to you live from Cape Town. And I cannot believe that it's end of the year already. I don't know where the year has gone, but we've had an amazing year of conservation conversations, 22 episodes, and we are very, very pleased to host Dr. Hanneline Smit-Robinson for this last one. Now, these webinars aren't free to host, but we do aim to keep these webinars free for everyone to be able to learn from and enjoy. So if you do enjoy watching and you can contribute, no matter how small an amount, please do consider doing so. So speaking of donations, we have been running a donation drive where people can win these amazing one of three amazing books donated by Peter and Irene Ginn, The Ultimate Companion for Birding in Southern Africa. So we had quite a lot of donations. Thank you very, very much to everyone who did donate. And I did a draw just now, a random draw of the people who donated, and I'm pleased to announce the winners. So congratulations and thank you very much to Jeff, Gerlinda, and Donald. I will be in touch with you in the next day or so to arrange sending you your prizes. So thank you very much to everyone who did donate as part of this campaign. If you didn't make it in time to donate, you can still do so by scanning the QR code on the screen. Unfortunately, you won't potentially win a prize, but you will support the webinars and the running costs of these webinars to help us keep going into the new year. So Birding Big Day is coming up very, very soon. It's coming up on the 6th of December, and registration is open. It's been open for a while now. There are various categories or two categories that you can participate in, 6 kilometers or 50-kilometer radius event. And this is really, really important. Well, Birding Big Day gathers really, really important data that helps us understand where birds are. It's also a very fun competition. So please do get a team together and go and register on our website. So as this is the last webinar of the year, I just wanted to say a big thank you to the rest of the Conservation Conversations team. John, Jess, and Kurt, most of you will be familiar with if you've watched other episodes. They are my co-hosts, and it's been great having them on board to share the load of hosting. As many people know, when Melissa and then Andrew left, I was the sole host for a little while, so it's great to have some additional support on that front. And then two faces that you won't have seen very often or at all on these webinars. Mpho Magi, she is the communications officer and does a lot of the work behind the scenes for marketing the webinars and developing the other materials. And then Valerie, who unfortunately left BirdLife South Africa in September, she worked very much behind the scenes editing the videos or the recordings and posting them on YouTube. So thank you very much to the rest of the team for an amazing year and some fantastic webinars. So we will be back next year, the 13th of January, and we're still putting the final touches on the schedule for the first few webinars. And as is usual, we plan to have a Bird of the Year webinar as our first webinar of the year, which next year is the Black Harrier. So please do join us again next year for another amazing and inspiring set of webinars. So without any further ado, our presentation this evening is on the conservation highlights for this year from BirdLife South Africa. And it's quite fitting to have this photo of all the BirdLife South Africa staff. And that's also why I put it as the background behind me, because this is really a massive team effort that Hanneline will be presenting. So it's a great pleasure to have Dr. Hanneline Smit-Robinson on as our presenter this evening. Hanneline heads up our conservation division. Her key responsibilities include oversight of all of BirdLife South Africa's conservation programs, including seabird, landbird, and habitat conservation, as well as policy and advocacy engagement, community conservation, and aviatourism projects. Hanneline graduated with a PhD in molecular zoology from the University of Stellenbosch, followed by postdoc research at the University of Berkeley, California. Hanneline was the African recipient of the prestigious L'Oréal UNESCO for Women in Science Award in 2008, and she is currently chairing the IUCN South African National Committee. So Hanneline, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's great to have you, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Christina. I'm just going to start sharing once you stop. Christina, is that all looking okay on your side?
It hasn't come through for me yet. Maybe we did have a little delay when we were doing the technical practice session, so maybe it's also just a bit delayed.
Okay, it shows that it's sharing on my side. I don't know if anyone else can maybe just let us know.
Yeah, maybe put a message in the chat if you can see Hanneline's screen yet. Okay, people are saying no, not yet.
Oh no, okay.
Things always work perfectly in the practice session and then somehow go wrong.
Definitely does.
Maybe stop sharing and try. Oh, there we go.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. I'm seeing it. You just need to put it in presentation mode.
All right, how is
Great.
that?
It's not on your title slide though, so maybe just go one slide back. There we go. Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, Christina. And hi, everyone. And it's lovely to be with you all tonight. And Christina already mentioned it, but what has happened to 2025? I cannot believe it's a year ago that we've went through the conservation highlights of 2024. But a big thank you for all your support to BirdLife South Africa throughout 2025. And I really look forward to sharing these key highlights. Of course, we have some victories and we have successes and exciting things to share. At the same time, there's a lot of concern, specifically around some threats to some of our seabirds and our landbird species. So as always, it's really a mixed bag. But before I start, I just want to also thank Christy Wooding, my conservation assistant. Christy has put basically the entire presentation together, getting all the information from our different members of the conservation team. So a big thank you to Christy for all her hard work. And then thank you also to our hosts throughout the year of conservation conversations. So with that, we have a lot to get through tonight. So I'm going to get started. And I'm going to be talking about the conservation division and the conservation projects, but I reflected and I thought it would be lovely just to mention this, specifically the change in the logo of BirdLife South Africa. So in 1996, BirdLife South Africa became a partner of BirdLife International. We also adopted the BirdLife International logo, and this year we decided to keep with the new look and style of BirdLife International, but to change the Arctic tern to the blue crane, which is now representative as the national bird of all of South Africa's bird species. And as always, I'd like to remind you, just before we start, of the mission of BirdLife South Africa. That is to strive to conserve birds and their habitats and biodiversity through scientifically based programs and through supporting the sustainable and equitable use of natural resources by encouraging people to enjoy and to value nature. So while we work through the different conservation projects, just to keep that in mind. And of course, this mission of BirdLife South Africa is aligned with that of our mother organization, BirdLife International. So we're more than 120 partners around the world. And BirdLife International's strategy is really based on birds. So all these partners focus on bird conservation. So it's birds that complete the circle. But we also work on the foundations of partnership and science. So we are the largest partnership for conservation organizations around the world. And we do everything scientifically. And then specifically for BirdLife International and its partners, it is to conserve species and their sites to address the systemic drivers of habitat loss and then to enable society for positive change. So we don't only align with the BirdLife International strategy on a global level, but also with that of many other multilateral environmental agreements. As such, we really support our national government, the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, in reaching these targets and making sure that we fulfill the mandates of these different conventions. So Dr. Charlotte Boyd attended the 2025 UN Ocean Conference in June in France. And then Charlotte and Kyle and Jessica attended the Ramsar COP15 in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe. So Ramsar specifically about the conservation of important wetland sites. And then Dr. Kirsten Day attended very recently, now in November, the African-Eurasian Migratory Waterbird Agreement meeting of parties in Bonn in Germany. So AWA is a daughter agreement of the Convention of the Migratory Species. And specifically here at AWA, Kirsten launched the South African National AWA Implementation Plan that was done by BirdLife South Africa, sponsored through the National Department, through DFFE. So a big moment for us on the international stage. And then I attended as head of conservation. I represented BirdLife South Africa at the IUCN World Conservation Congress in Abu Dhabi in October this year. So the IUCN is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It is the largest and the oldest environmental network that there is. It was founded in 1948 in Switzerland. I'm also currently the chair of the South Africa National Committee. And in South Africa, we are the 8th largest national committee, and we have 28 members of our committee. So in my role as chair, I presented a session on strengthening collaboration locally and across the African continent. So this was by far the largest conference that I've ever attended. There was 10,000 participants. And over the last few days, it was a full week of meetings. We adopted 147 resolutions to advance the global environmental action for the future of our planet. It was also a lovely event to network with BirdLife International colleagues. So it was 80 BirdLife International delegates from 45 different partners around the world. So tonight specifically, I'll be running through the conservation highlights for this year of these 7 different conservation programs of BirdLife South Africa. So here with me in this photograph, we have our 7 program managers, and a big thank you to them and their teams for the dedicated and passionate work that they do. So we're going to start tonight with the Empowering People program. We always change the order of the different programs in the presentations. And for Empowering People, it really is difficult, and it's bringing forward in terms of balancing the needs of people with that of biodiversity conservation. So incredibly important aspect of the work that we do at BirdLife South Africa. So Nandi is our program manager, and Nandi Tubela and Tandu attended the 43rd Environmental Education Association of Southern Africa conference held in Cape Town this year. And at this conference, Tandu specifically presented on our curriculum integrated resources that speaks to enhancing the understanding of biodiversity conservation, but also importantly, developing resources that's linking to numeracy and literacy as well. So really aligned with the school curriculum. Our environmental education and awareness work is ongoing in 4 schools in northern KwaZulu-Natal, as well as 3 schools in southern KwaZulu-Natal. And we also had our annual Flufftail Festival this year, which links to World Wetlands Day in February in Gauteng at Marievale. And this was with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Gauteng, and it was a huge success. Another highlight for this environmental education awareness project was the appointment of Zuleka Makisi as the Grasslands Community Conservation Officer at the start of this year. And this role is specifically fulfilled in the Daggakraal, Wakkerstroom and Groenvlei areas and links strongly on our efforts to address the Bothaslaag conservation crisis. So Zuleika's already implemented environmental education awareness work at 7 schools, so with 5,000 learners in the area. And just to highlight one of the projects that she did, so we've taken wheelie bins to some of these schools, to 3 of the schools, really to promote the waste management, support of waste management, as well as in return for that to help provide essential supplies such as stationery for these learners in need. So the other part of our community conservation project here at the Dagga is specifically to engage with the traditional leaders and with the trust that owns part of the land at Dagga, which is an important site for the Bothaslaag. So we've started to foster and strengthen that collaboration. Then moving on to Southern KZN, to the Nsekeni Sustainable Livelihoods Rangelands project. So this project was started specifically with a focus on Nsekeni Nature Reserve. It's a Ramsar site, 9,500 hectares in total. One of the most important wetlands for white-winged flufftail conservation. And one of the metrics of this project that is literally done surrounding Nsekeni Nature Reserve, this rangelands projects, is to reduce the grazing of the cattle within the nature reserve. So this is the second year of the project, and Tutuku has done incredible work. So we had our first ever cattle auction or live market for the community organized under this Herding for Health project, and it generated more than 500,000 in revenue. So this is just to showcase how sustainable economic development, in this case specifically in terms of protecting rangelands, linking onto environmental restoration, can link strongly to the biodiversity economy in South Africa. And this was a particular highlight. There's ground hornbills, southern ground hornbills in the area, but they've not been seen on the rangeland sites for many years. And after 1 year of implementing this project, we've had southern ground hornbills return to the site this year. And then going on to the last project in the Empowering People program, AviTourism. So we have an incredible partnership with Wild Earth that John has agreed with them. And we are focusing specifically here on our female bird guides that's getting an opportunity to join these Wild Earth shows and get an opportunity and experience in terms of presenting. And then we've trained Johnny van Rooyen. He's a guide that will be placed at Lambos Bay in the Western Cape through Ikkie Foundation funding. And Johnny did exceptionally well in his training. We currently are training 7 of our existing community bird guides who's not completed their legally compliant training with FOGASA. So this is currently happening over the 2 weeks now at our Wakkerstroom Grasslands Conservation Centre. And we have established a number of wonderful partnerships, including with Volvo this year for the AviTourism project. Then on to our second program, the Science and Innovation program. And it's just Dave and Alan here within this program, a very successful year for the 2 of them. Firstly, the publication of our red list, so the updating of our regional red list of birds of South Africa, Lesotho, and Eswatini. And while most of the results of this book is quite depressing overall, specifically for our water birds, there's really been some wonderful conservation success stories too that we can celebrate for the southern bald ibis, the Cape vulture, wattled crane, and also the white-winged flufftail. So this was a massive scientific exercise where we had 753 non-vagrant species examined in South Africa, and 147 of those are now threatened or near threatened within the red list. And we also included species accounts for 70 endemic and near endemic least concerned species. Then moving on to a publication that links very strongly to our red listing project. And this was the brainchild of Vernon Head, one of our board members, that came up with the idea that we should have a popular version of the Red Data book, speaking specifically to these different bird species and their threat status, but also to offer multiple stories of hope and of inspiration from all the researchers and conservationists and ornithologists that's involved in conservation in the field. So this book was launched late this year, and we've had various launches in in Johannesburg and also around the country. And then also on science and spatial planning, which was a marathon session, was to complete the 2025 revision of the National Biodiversity Assessment for birds within SANBI's National Biodiversity Assessment. So the last assessment was published in 2018, and the 2025 assessment will be launched this December. And this work really assessed the protection levels within the National Protected Area Network, looking at increasing the protection for some of our species due to the growth of our protected areas. So that was a success. But there are key conservation gaps specifically for some of our threatened and endemic species that's highlighted within the assessment. Then on to policy and advocacy program. And here I just want to highlight the work of the Birds and Renewable Energy Project. So we mentioned these reports right at the end of last year, but we've published a summary of bird monitoring reports from operational wind energy facilities in South Africa earlier this year. And this report really shows that wind turbine collisions are at concerning levels for some of our species. So for the mortalities with some of the species like the black harrier, the rose eagle, Cape vulture, martial eagle is not sustainable as it is. And there's evidence to support better planning and management of wind energy facilities included within the summary report that Sam provided. Then another very useful handbook is the handbook on the use of shutdown on demand for the mitigation of bird collision risk at onshore wood farms in South Africa. And this shutdown on demand handbook provides a resource to avifaunal specialists, to developers, it's back to the industry, specifically for the design of avifaunal impact mitigation strategies at our existing, but also for the planning of new wind farms. Then on to seabird conservation program. And I think you'll probably all know what will come next to talk specifically around the island closures. So last year, we highlighted the ongoing litigation that was started in March 2024 in collaboration with SANCOP, and we were represented by the Biodiversity Law Centre, specifically around island closures. So island closures were put in place by Minister Creasy, but these were not biologically meaningful, and we took this decision to court. Exactly almost 1 year later, and we were 1 week away from going to court, we reached a settlement with the commercial fishing industry, securing these no-take zones or island closures, which are now biologically meaningful around 6 of our key African penguin colonies. Really such a wonderful victory. And these are just the 6 islands. Unfortunately, due to our time constraints, I can't go through the details, but on the West Coast, the Southwest Coast, and also the East Coast of South Africa. So on the 18th of March, this settlement was made an order of the High Court. So this is not only a highlight for the seabird conservation program, but also for the policy and advocacy program. And Kirsten worked really hard to get public and media exposure for what we did throughout 2024 and into the start of 2025. And through our collaboration with SANCOP and also the Blue Marine Foundation and the Prophets, we managed to attract almost 45,000 signatories to a petition where we specifically wanted to help and get the public attention around saving the African penguin. So this day of the island closure victory in court, I think, is absolutely etched in our memories forever. It was a wonderful day of celebrations at the High Court in Pretoria, but also around the country. We were supported by so many other groups and organizations marching for the conservation of African penguins and also for the protection of our oceans. So the next step, of course, and a question that many asked was, how would we actually track possible transgressions or monitor compliance? So Philip Forer, that joined us at the start of this year, designed an online application or app that can be used. So this is a monitoring system that's based on Global Fishing Watch, using machine learning to analyze automatic information systems data that's transmitted by these fishing vessels to detect any apparent fishing events within the no-take zones. And then just to highlight the monitoring and research that's ongoing on the African penguins, we have the African Penguin Monitoring System, the APMS, that's implemented at 4 of the colonies. So that's when the birds are fitted with a microchip and they literally weigh in. So they weigh in before and after going to sea, so we can understand food availability. And then 40 birds are also fitted with biologgers, which helps us to understand their core foraging ranges at sea. So at this stage, I just want to remember and honor Pamela Estelle, who also passed away on the 18th of March, the same day the island closure court case that we went to High Court. Pamela supported African penguin conservation. It was a favorite bird. And in fact, the photograph here is where Mark and Christina is handing the Austin Roberts Memorial Award to Pamela Estelle this year. And just a few weeks later, Pamela passed away. Pamela is also the sponsor of my position. And we will forever honor Pamela's legacy at BirdLife South Africa, not only the legacy that she left at BirdLife South Africa, but also for conservation globally. So Pamela is also Christina's donor. Christina, a wonderful host of Conservation Conversations. And I always include almost the same slide because I just love this slide talking specifically about the African penguin colony at the De Hoop Nature Reserve. And we've had success since 2022 of this project. We've had a few drawbacks. We've had difficulties in 2023 with storm damage, and in 2024, predation event by the honey badger that managed to get in. But success again in 2025 with 2 breeding pairs, 4 chicks at the Hoop, and 10 penguins being present at the colony. So well done, Christina. And then Christina allowed me to share this wonderful news with you tonight. So we have released 333 rehab penguins at this site. And one of the penguins that we released in 2023 had a tracker. So it moved all the way up to Swakopmund in Namibia. And then after 42 days, we lost track of the penguin. So the tracker came off, but it also was fitted with a microchip. And it weighed in on the weighbridge just last week, so a few days ago. So it returned to the natal colony, to the Hoop. And that is just such wonderful news and give us so much hope for the success of this project into the future. Then our last project, but an important one within the seabird conservation program, is the Albatross Task Force. And this 2-person team, Andrea and Reason, have worked incredibly hard this year. And they have worked with Imvelo Blue Environment specifically to implement the first fleet-wide implementation of the bird scaring line tension device. On this photograph, you can actually see that tension device that's used for long line and trawl vessels. So this device will actually help us with the monitoring of compliance when there's no observers on board. So it actually would log the deployments as well as the tension of the device. And we've equipped 4 out of 10 target vessels already for this project. Then a long ongoing project is the Ocean View Association for Persons with Disabilities project, where we work specifically in the manufacturing and supply of these bird scaring lines to the fishing industry. And good news is that our uptake has increased this year, so well done to Reason. 122 bird scaring lines sold, equipping 70 vessels with these bird scaring lines. So now moving on from sea to land again to our species conservation program, focusing specifically to threats other than just habitat loss to our land bird species. And the first being our vulture project. So we have a long-standing project at Dronfield Nature Reserve in the Northern Cape, where they studied the effect of lead poisoning on post-fletching movement of white-backed vultures. 108 nests were surveyed there this year. Blood samples were collected from 76 chicks. And this year we fitted 5 tracking units to these juvenile birds at Dronfield, but in total we have fitted more than 40 tracking devices already. So So part of our Vulture project is really to do advocacy work, working specifically with the industries, including with the culling industries and with game rangers, as well as the hunting industries. And Justin Henry here on the slides have held successful organized days and co-hosted 2 lead awareness days, one at Mongola and the other at Thornybush Game Reserve. So one in KZN and then the other one in the Greater Kruger area. Justin also continues to test the efficiency of and the efficacy of using this lead ammunition, not non-toxic, so non-lead ammunition in different calibers. Another highlight for us was a very recent meeting with the SANParks corporate firearms manager and chief instrument maker in Skukuza in the Kruger National Park, talking specifically about the impact of lead on our vulture species. And SANParks here has expressed an interest of phasing out lead-based ammunition, not only in the Kruger National Park, but across all SANParks operations. Then the Secretary Bird Project was started in 2012 by myself and Arends Retief. So this is one of our long-standing conservation projects. To date, we have 24 tracking units deployed, and 3 of those devices are still active. So we have tracked for more than 10,000 tracking days. We have more than 750,000 points. And we have also managed to observe 4 adult breeding events over the past 3 years from these tracking units. And apart from using this telemetry to understand the movements and the habitat use and the survival of the secretary birds, it's helping us to create an updated habitat suitability model for the species, and also to build flight risk models, which is going to be particularly important when we produce our best practice guidelines for the wind energy industry, specifically for the species. So Cassie has reported that it's an absolute bumper year for secretary birds and secretary bird breeding. Could be the winter rains that we had. So we had a relatively wet winter season and then early summer rains. But there's already 22 active nests that he's monitoring, with 4 nestlings already ringed. And since 2012, when we started the project, we have about 300 nests that we have record of throughout South Africa. Then the last project within the species conservation program is the Birds and Agrochemicals project, done by Lorinda Hart. So Lorinda has completed the bird toxicity risk assessments for 2025 approved wine grape agrochemical product list of IPW. And these findings were presented at an international congress. So it's the 9th World Congress of CTAC that took place in Johannesburg here in South Africa. And these findings were also published, or a review was also published on sublethal agrochemical residues in South African birds in our own journal in Ostrich just a few days ago. And this work's really important in terms of setting the standards. So regulations can be changed, farming practices can be changed. This is really to safeguard not only birds and biodiversity, but also human health. Then on to our largest conservation program. So this is the Landscape Conservation Program, specifically looking at protecting habitats for our bird species in South Africa. And starting all the way in the West Coast, with the Western Cape Estuaries Conservation Project. So Giselle, our Western Cape Estuaries Conservation Project Manager, has supported existing and developing conservation areas at the Burke River along the west coast, as well as the Klein River along the south coast, including the development of protected area environmental management plans and also invasive alien plant management unit clearing plans. Last year, we mentioned our blue carbon project at Burke River Estuary at Veldrift. Philip Grundling has progressed with this work in his role as West Coast Estuaries Conservation Officer, and he strengthened the partnership here with Bokmakiri Nursery in terms of the restoration and the planting here at the Burke River Estuary. So looking at the Burke River Estuary from an aerial view, we can't only see the importance of this estuary, but it's also highlighting where are the areas that the degradation is specifically taking place. And also, as we continue with the restoration project and the recovery, we'd be able to track this with this aerial imagery. And I thought to just include this. This is a drone imagery of the Berg River estuary, which has enabled us to do a count of this Cape Cormorant roosting site. So it's all Cape Cormorants that's roosting at the commercial saltworks that can be counted in this way. Then moving on to the Ngula and Grasslands Conservation Project, Karina here as the project manager has provided ecological support for the nature reserve, so our core area, the Ngula Nature Reserve, as well as the surrounding protected environments, the Upper Volga protected environment and the Sneuberg protected environment, as well as for all the formerly unprotected grasslands that's in between these protected environments, through regular engagement with approximately 40 landowners in the Eastern Free State area. Working with Karina is Stephen, who's our Ngula Conservation and Education Officer. And Stephen is doing a lot of monitoring work at Ngula Nature Reserve. But as part of his role, he's also supporting different schools and reaching out through environmental education and awareness to 5 schools within the immediate area of the Ngula Nature Reserve. Is implementing various environmental themes, including our Bird of the Year materials, as well as materials that specifically focused on the conservation and raising awareness around the southern bald ibis that's also recently been downlisted. Then our Wetlands and White-winged Flufftail Conservation Project had a bumper year in terms of publication. So they published and distributed 2 guidelines and 2 children's books to aid the conservation of the species as well as wetlands in South Africa. And I'd like to highlight specifically the first publication, which is a 200-page publication on best practice guidelines for the high elevation wetland and peatland management in Southern Africa. So Marlies, that works closely with Kyle, has also worked hard in terms of supporting the Steenkamp, supporting the Tim Dilden, the Avis Nature Reserve and the Middelpunt Nature Reserve in terms of their management plans. So working specifically, engaging with the landowners and also helping with the management plans of the Nature Reserve. But Marlies has also developed a number of infographics. So she engaged with different stakeholders within these protected environments and nature reserve, distributing the different guidelines as well as the infographics. And then I've skipped a slide, but I just want to go back to show the downlisting of white-winged flufftail regionally. So in South Africa, Lesotho and Eswatini, from critically endangered to endangered. I always sort of caution that this is not a success story in terms of conservation success for the species, but more in terms of us having an improved understanding through the dedicated research that we've done over the past 10 years or so in South Africa on the species. There's still only one breeding site remaining, to the best of our knowledge, at least in Ethiopia for the species in the Northern Hemisphere. So it is important for us to conserve that site as well, and therefore the species will remain critically endangered globally. But at least here in South Africa, the species is doing better, and we've really improved our understanding of white-winged flufftail, and well done to Kyle and the team. Then on to the Grasslands Conservation Centre in Wakkerstroom. Absolute key milestone was for us to launch the BirdLife South Africa Grasslands Conservation Centre. This became a central hub for grassland protection and will be hopefully over many decades to come. So we have restructured from an agritourism centre to a grassland conservation centre with the aims of doing Boerteslaag research in the area, monitoring the species, doing conservation on the species, but not only on Boerteslaag, also Ratslaag, yellow-breasted pipit, and all the other species of conservation concern, to do intense landowner engagement, to provide support for the existing protected areas in this greater Wakkerstroom area, which is also a strategic water source area in the country, and to assist with new protected environment declarations. So Roy Robertson joined us as the center manager and also the project manager at the start of the year. And he advanced conservation of high altitude grasslands in this landscape through so many different tasks, including the management of the center. So Roy has got to be involved in almost every possible thing, but he's also involved in fieldwork, which is targeting agrochemical, pharmaceutical impact research. Then he's doing a lot of landowner engagement, providing policy support for farmers, engaging with the landowners, as well as the local communities, supporting Zuleka and her work at the Hakal, and then also fostering practical science-driven stewardship of South Africa's threatened ecosystems in the Greater Wakkerstroom area. So Roy is assisted by Lucky, who's our permanently employed bird guide at Wakkerstroom. Lucky, of course, plays a very key role in guiding educational and birding tours. So Lucky is fully booked throughout the summer season. But he also works hard with Roy on working with the herdsmen, so advancing community-based conservation through his leadership in the herdsman project on the private farms, and also extensive engagement with the local farmers themselves. So this is all around the conservation of this critically endangered bird, which we spoke about for the first time last year, which came as a very big shock to us to see that there's been a 90% decline in this species over the last 10 years and a 30% habitat loss over the last 10 years. And the distribution of Boertaslark is shown here, endemic to the high-veld grasslands of South Africa, tiny distribution, and hence now classified as critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. So Matthew Rolovich started last year working on the project. Birding Ecotours Fellow of Grassland Conservation. Birding Ecotours made his position possible and really also enabled us to start this bigger and Greater Wakkerstroom project. So Matthew last year was able to observe the breeding of a few Boertaslarks. We're not 100% sure how many individuals, possibly around 20 individuals at the community site. And here you can see from egg stage right through to fledgling stage. And, it's a little brown job, but as we work with the species, I can't help to think that it's just as beautiful or even more beautiful than many of our other bird species. But what is of concern is the high predation rate that we've seen. This is, of course, natural for many ground nesting species, similar for its close sister taxon, the pink-billed lark. But we've had a success rate for the breeding that we observed throughout the season at the community site of only 21%. We now have camera traps to understand the predators and the predation better and what that would mean for the species. That could be one of the reasons for the decline, but without the scientific evidence, we cannot actually ascribe it to the decline of the species as yet. There's potentially many other reasons: habitat loss, increase of monocultures in that area, change from sheep to cattle grazing over the past 20 years, climate change, recording some of the warmest days, pharmaceuticals that could be used. There is so much that we still need to understand. At the same time, we have to put in absolutely every possible measure that we can to make a difference for the species. So because we have only one Matthew and we can only cover so much ground, we decided that this year we will have a Boertaslark Atlas Bash, where we were supported by 40 expert birders. These citizen scientists helped to observe more than 5,000 observations over the Atlas weekend. 227 different species were recorded. 31 of those species were of conservation concern. So we covered the area from Amersfoort to Harrismith. There's a glimmer of hope in that we did find, and this was a highlight that was just recently shared on the BirdLife South Africa social media channels, we did find a few more individuals. There's a lot more that we need to learn. The site is quite far from the community sites on private property. And we need more resources to do so, but it's wonderful news that we did find this second population. Matthew worked hard through the winter season, specifically on finalizing the Boertaslag Species Action Plan that will provide a strategic roadmap for the protection and the recovery of this critically endangered species. And once again, a big thank you to everybody that made it possible for us to start this project. And then I'd also like to touch on the other effective area-based conservation measures projects that's implemented from Steve McKean, that's seconded to us from Conservation Outcomes. We have made incredible progress with this project that's closely linked to the Global Biodiversity Framework Target 3, specifically on the target of habitat conservation. So Steve has assessed 3 sites for OECM recognition and reporting in 3 biospheres, the Gouritz Cluster Biosphere Reserve, the Wembe Biosphere Reserve, and the Kruger to Canyons Biosphere Reserve. And then once we have the national OECM norms and standards, hopefully in early 2026, we'll be ready to submit these sites for recognition and reporting. And on to our last conservation program, the Regional Conservation Program, not only focusing their efforts in South Africa, but also throughout the continent, and also focusing on the conservation of our flyways and our migratory birds. So Charlotte Boyd joined us as the program manager earlier this year. Charlotte is an absolute specialist on key biodiversity areas, but she's doing a lot of work with the spatial biodiversity assessment, prioritization, and planning project in collaboration with SANBI. And she's made significant contributions to South Africa's National Biodiversity Assessment that will be published later this year, and not specifically for our bird species, but also for other taxa. Then Charlotte has just led a workshop in Namibia, and this was a regional workshop on key biodiversity areas. And it brought together 50 participants from Namibia, South Africa, Mozambique, and Malawi. The last project that I'd like to highlight is this one that's really caught the public attention, also by one of our Conservation Conversations webinar hosts, by Jess, focusing on our flyway conservation using the European roller as our flagship species. So we fitted trackers to 2 European rollers in 2024, another 5 in early 2025 at Thornybush Nature Reserve. And we've had incredible results in where these rollers go, where they breed. So one of our tag individuals, Rory, who was named by Pamela Estel, the grandson's name is Rory, migrated as far as to China. And it bred in China. Jess managed to make contact with one of the professors in China. And Professor Ming went to the site, took a photograph of Rory in its breeding plumage, so much more of a very definite bright blue coloration that the birds got in breeding plumage. And what a wonderful collaboration was established. And Rory is on its way back to South Africa. So this update is literally from yesterday on 3 of the tracked birds on Atlas, who's still not made it back to Africa. But then Juno and Rory, that's returned to Eastern Kenya. They've arrived there on the 9th and the 10th of November. And last week, so I was in Salati Nature Reserve, where I gave a presentation on Friday evening. And just before my presentation, I saw my very first European roller for the season. So I think we can expect to welcome Juno and Rory home soon to South Africa. So I'd just like to thank and acknowledge this absolutely incredible team of passionate and dedicated conservationists that work with us at BirdLife South Africa. And I've just presented a very small snapshot of the work that they completed in 2025. Then I'd also like to thank all our core staff who's supporting all of us and don't always get the recognition for all the work that they do in terms of supporting us. So thank you to the entire BirdLife South Africa team. I'd like to invite you to join us next year at Bonamanzi Game Reserve. We only have space for 180 people, so please do book soon. We will be sharing some of our conservation projects. There'll be a science lab specifically talking about ornithology. So some of the projects is done by researchers, conservationists, and ornithologists throughout the country. And then also to participate in Birding Big Day on 6th December, which is just around the corner. A wonderful partnership that we have this year with Return Africa. So with that, a massive thank you to my sponsors, to the Eastall Family Foundation and the Hans Huizen Charitable Trust, to all our other sponsors and donors, to our chairperson, our board of directors, all our volunteers, all our members, yeah, everybody that supported us during 2025, and to wish you all the best for the festive season ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hanneline. That was amazing. I mean, I know all the work that we do kind of in bits and pieces, but it's very inspiring and quite incredible to see it all presented in one go. So thank you very much. And you can see from all the reactions that are coming through that everyone also loved your presentation. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, so we have a few questions coming in, and if anyone else would like to ask a question, please do put it in the Q&A box and we will try and get to it. So I'll start with one from Penny Abbott, who says that she saw a tagged whiteback vulture in the Kalahari last week. Who should she report that to?
I think it would be great if she could report to us. It may be one of our birds, but also be a bird that's perhaps tracked by one of the other organizations, maybe by the Endangered Wildlife Trust. But Penny, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So Penny, I think you can email either, I guess you can email conversations@birdlife.org.za and we will direct uh, your information to the correct person. And then there's a question from Alistair Stalker saying that a recent report has shown the dire state of our provincial reserves and asking whether BirdLife has a possible role in rehabilitating some of these. That's quite a tricky question.
Alistair, thank you. Yeah, that's a loaded question. Um, Certainly, where most of our involvement is through highlighting and providing our support for this report that's been published specifically to the minister. So we've reached out to Minister George. We have reached out to the new minister on this as well. And then in my role at the IUCN as chair, that was also one of the things that we brought to the attention of Minister George when we met with him earlier this year. And Nsikeni is maybe an example where we are providing support to one of the nature reserves. So we're working closely with SMVelo, KZN Wildlife to try to address all the biosecurity risks for the nature reserve. So I think there's various ways in which we can get involved. It's just that the mountain is so big to climb, and to get the resources to do that is incredibly tricky. So we have to prioritize. But yeah, Alistair, can't agree more with you that it's incredibly important.
Thanks for that, Hanneline. Then a question from Rob Simmons saying, Hanneline, how on earth do you keep track of all these conservation programs?
Oh, I don't. I'm glad you think I do. Oh, I think sometimes I wonder if it's age or if it's just the number of projects that's growing.
Yeah, it's a big job, but you do it well, Hanneline. So then
Thanks,
there's a question
Christina.
from Nicolette van Brockel. It's asking what's the latest on the Mouse-Free Marion project?
So it's a question that I have difficulty in answering, Nicolette. So it's a one project that's I'm not involved in. So that's a project that's run through our Mouse-Free Marion project. Anton Walford, who is the manager. There has been a lot of progress, specifically with fundraising this year, ongoing engagement with the department. But we can write to Anton and perhaps get a full feedback for you. Christina, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, I think you've covered the big focus of theirs, which has been fundraising, and they are also they have two overwinterers on Marion Island now who are doing some research projects I'm not entirely sure what they are, but they involve looking at what the potential impacts of the baiting to get rid of the mice might have on the rest of the island. But yeah, I think fundraising was their biggest priority this year.
And then also the legal registration of the bait, which
Oh,
is
yes.
an ongoing discussion with the
Mm.
department.
Yes. Um, and now we've come to the last question. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions. You have a couple of minutes before we'll end. So if anyone has another burning question for Hanneline, you can put it in the Q&A box now. But another one from Rob, and this one might be very difficult to answer, asking which one stands out as your most rewarding highlight?
Rob,
Is it
that
like
is so
choosing a favorite
tricky to
child?
it's so tricky to answer because I have many. I like what Christina says. Like to luckily, I only have one child, so I don't have to choose a favorite child. But I love different projects for different reasons, and there's rewards that come at the most unexpected times. But every week there's some highlight that comes in from a project that makes my day or makes my week. So it changes all the time. From a personal perspective, it's been really rewarding working on the white-winged flufftail project, where I was more involved with the research previously. But we had the absolute wonderful African penguin victory this year. At the same time, we've got the European roller, so we've got Vakkerstroom, we've got vultures. I can mention every project because I all love them as my children. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so difficult. Rob always asks the hard questions, so
But
um,
thanks for that, Rob. Maybe I should have stayed renewable energy, Rob, especially for you.
absolutely. Um, yeah, so we've actually come to the end of the questions that have come through in the Q&A box, and it's actually, you were worried about time, Hanneline, but we are bang on time at 8 o'clock. Well, 2 minutes to 8, so I think it's a good enough time to end on a positive note. And just to say, as this is our last webinar, just a big thank you to all our loyal viewers. I see a lot of a lot of familiar names in the participant list every time I host. So thank you very, very much to all of you who have been watching. A lot of people from the beginning, and even if you're tuning in for the first time tonight, thank you very much to our audience. And also thank you to our amazing lineup of presenters this year. We've had 22 incredible webinars. And if you have missed any of them, please go to YouTube and search for BirdLife South Africa, and you'll be able to see a playlist of all the conservation conversations webinars going back all the way to 2020. So if you have missed any, please do go and catch up. And yeah, just a final thank you very much to Hanneline and to the rest of my colleagues who've made these amazing highlights possible. And with that, we will leave it there for 2025, and we will be back on the 13th of January 2026. So please do join us then. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Christina.